Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be covering a topic that I'm very excited about, which combines mobile experience and performance. Before we get started, I want to share a bit about myself. I'm originally from Uruguay. I was born in Montevideo, which is the capital city, and I started my professional career in the software testing field, specifically in performance testing. And I spent the first 5 years immersed in load testing projects. I'm a computer engineer, and besides being the co-founder of Apteam, I'm also an executive director and a board member at Abstracta, which is a software consulting firm with over 11 years of experience and trajectory in testing and clients all over the world. I moved to San Francisco, California in 2017 with Abstracta. I lived there for some time, and I recently relocated to Vancouver, Canada. That's where I'm based out today. Well, I'm not working in my startup. I like doing kite surfing and vegan, so I cook a lot of plant-based food. And I also support and promote a lot of projects to include more women in IT, so promoting more participation in women. One example of a project that we launched in Uruguay a couple of years ago, it's called Reconvertite, which goal is to train women from rural areas in the country in software testing, so they can get a chance to land a job in IT and starting with testing, which is for me a great way to get to know this world. So if you have any project that promotes more women in tech and specifically testing, please do let me know, because I'm very interested in sharing ideas and experiences. Okay, let's jump into the agenda for today. So today I'm going to talk about how you can incorporate client-side performance tests in mobile apps early on during exploratory testing, which I hope most of you are doing at some point. I'll start by talking about how performance impacts user experience in mobile. And I'm going to introduce the differences between a web and a mobile app, meaning a website in mobile versus a mobile native app. Then I'm going to focus on the client-side performance. What are the metrics we can measure for each? I'm going to mention some tools that you can use for both web and mobile apps that you can use, of course, during exploratory testing. And then I'm going to do a brief demo of two that I choose. One would be for web and another one for mobile. The one for mobile is a free tool that we developed at Apteam. So, we're looking forward to getting your feedback. If you are testing today mobile apps, this could be a good way to start analyzing client-side performance. And then I'll leave some minutes at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat and I'll answer them at the end. So let's start with the most important question. Why should we care about mobile performance in the first place? Well, the truth is that this is the first time in history that the number of mobile users is greater than the number of desktop users. So if you have a business and you're selling services or a product, most of your users are going to be accessing your services through a mobile device or a tablet. This is data that was collected by Statista in 2020, and it showed that 54% of users, probably this number is even higher today after a year and a half into a pandemic, are accessing through web and mobile and tablet, and the other 46% are using desktop. So more than ever before, we should think about what experience are we giving to our mobile users. And the truth is that mobile web performance has a huge impact in user experience. So here I'm referring to a mobile-friendly website, or basically accessing a website through a mobile device. So one of the first the top issues that users complain in mobile is slow pages. It's not crashes, like site crashes, a lot of people think about, but it's really how slow our websites or a website I'm trying to access is loading my device. And we need to know that also user expectations in mobile are higher than if they're accessing through a desktop. they actually expect, most of users in mobile, they expect web pages to load faster or at least the same as in desktop or in a PC, which will be below 3 to 4 milliseconds. And last but not least, if we think about websites, which is basically JavaScript code running, there are differences in the underlying framework that can make the website run smaller. If the mobile app is properly developed, it can run up to 5 times faster than a website. So imagine if you are competing with a native app in the device of the user, they are going to be comparing the experience you're providing through the website with their mobile apps. And this takes me to the next question, which we get asked a lot when it comes to specifically performance and user experiences. Should we build a mobile app, or should we just have a mobile-friendly website? And this is some a recent report and some data that was collected by Sensor Tower that revealed that during the first half of 2020. The spending in mobile apps and also the first-time app installs grew significantly. When it comes to consumer spending, it reached $50 billion across both the App Store and the Google Play Store. And we might think, which is obviously also the cause, that COVID-19 had an impact in user behavior, and that's why this increase was substantially in the first half of 2020, but this is set to continue rising. So this is not only something that happened in 2020. We can still see that most of the e-commerce has been, most of the growth in e-commerce have been through mobile as well. And this is true also for first-time app installs. I've read a lot of articles in the past saying that we users are tired of installing apps in our phone, that it's super hard to get a new app, high ranking in the App Store, and all that. That's true, but the numbers show that consumers are acting differently. There's been over 70 billion first-time app installs in that same period, in the first half of 2020, and this is an increase of 26% over the same period last year. So I think as a business, this gives you an incentive of at least considering having a mobile app if that is your choice. Does this mean that we all need to run and develop a mobile app? Well, I'll say that the right choice depends on what are your business objectives. So if your goal is to offer mobile-friendly content to a wide range of people, then probably a mobile website is the best way to go. Just having a mobile-friendly website that anyone can access, and there's no need to download any app or do any updates. But on the other hand, if you want to engage better with your users, if you want to have more custom ways to interact and communicate with them, which can potentially drive customer loyalty, then I'll say that the mobile app presents itself as a better option. So let's jump into what are the benefits of both. And I'm not going to cover today the hybrid app world because this talk will be too long, but I just tried to separate a mobile website, so maybe basically a website accessing through a mobile device with native apps, and then I'm going to mention some newish technologies. What are the benefits of having a website, a mobile-friendly website? The first one I already mentioned, it is accessible for everyone. You just need to have internet connection, and from your device, you can navigate to the URL, and there you are. There's nothing else that is required. Also, from the user perspective, there's no need to update. You update your servers, and then your website gets updated in every device. And then it's usually more cost effective because you are not developing different platforms like Android and iOS and have a team specifically for each platform. When it comes to mobile apps, I'm not talking here native mobile apps. They offer more interactive ways to engage with users, as I mentioned, better personalization, one of the benefits that it has, that it works offline, so you can provide users still with content, even if they don't have internet connection at some point. You can use, gestures. You can provide more intuitive interfaces. You can use mobile device features such as the camera, the contact list, GPS, phone calls. So it brings more power as well to the developer. And if it is properly developed, it should work faster than a website. And then I briefly mentioned some newish technologies. Newish because some of them have been around for a while, that I want to mention. The first one is called AMP, which was known as its infancy as Accelerated Mobile Pages. AMP is an open source project that was originally developed by Google and Twitter. And the goal was to create optimized mobile web pages. And the second one, which I think is the best of both worlds between web and mobile, it's PWA. PWA stands for Progressive Web Apps, and at their heart, they're just web applications, but built and enhanced with modern APIs, so they can deliver native-like capabilities. The benefits, some of the benefits that I mentioned from native apps, while you can still, reach anyone, anywhere, because you just have one single code base. So it is something super interesting to consider when you are going to develop, or when you're going to choose between developing a mobile native app or just sticking to a website. So there are some alternatives out there. And then when it comes to measuring performance of these two different platforms, a mobile versus a web application, there are striking differences in how they are built. And that is how it's going to define what should we look for when we're testing for client-side performance. So a mobile application, it depends on the underlying framework provided by their operating systems, which the most used ones are Android and iOS. And on the other hand, web applications, they have similar functionality to desktop apps. So they have the client-server architecture, where the client, which includes the user interface and the client-side logic, runs in a web browser. And this makes, when we talk about client performance, these differences make it possible for us to have a holistic overview of how it's performing when we look at the right metrics. So we need to understand that we're going to be measuring and monitoring different things when we talk about a website versus a mobile app. So now that I've discussed a bit the differences between both web and mobile apps, I'm going to cover what are the different things that we can measure. I'm going to provide examples, different things that we can measure in terms of performance and on the client side. When it comes to web app, and here one of the most, I'll say, important things to start with and to consider is the client-side processing of a website when runs in mobile is constrained by a slower CPU and less memory that available in a PC or a Mac. So taking this into consideration, there are certain optimizations or even areas that we have to look at more carefully. I listed here some examples, measuring what are the JavaScript parsing times of our website, image sizes when you're delivering them to mobile. There's a lot of optimization that you can do there, so they load faster. Also the loading and rendering of the below the fold content, how we are doing that, and any optimizations that can be done in mobile, as well as caching policies and other areas that we can measure. And when it comes to native apps, and I think here is the big challenge that many mobile teams face, is what we call the device fragmentation and also OS fragmentation, meaning the operating system. So to give you an idea on how big this problem is in Android, I'm showing this graph for the last 80 years, all the different versions of the Android operating system that have been released, and the percentage of users in the market at that point in time. So you can see here that if we take a closer look to last year, 2020, if we want to cover, let's say, 70% of the Android market with our test, we will need to use at least 6 different OS versions of Android. And this, of course, is a problem that keeps increasing with every year new releases, not only of OSs, but also of devices. So the hardware is changing. And we want to make sure, depending, of course, of our audience, if we're able to provide a good experience in a low-end device, meaning a device with less hardware, meaning like less memory available, versus a high-end device, which could be one of the latest released this year. So it makes it a bit trickier to make sure that we're providing a good experience in a bigger range of devices in Android. When it comes to iOS, I'll say here developers and testers have an easier life, because as we all know, most of iOS users will update to the latest version. You can see here in June this year, 85% of iOS users were already in using the latest one, which was iOS 14 at the time. I will add that recently, because as well, Apple releases different newer versions of both iPhones and iPads every year. There is still fragmentation in terms of hardware in iOS. So we have experience with teams that they need to provide good experience not only in iPhones, but also in iPads and different versions of iOS. So you want to make sure that also you have a good coverage in terms of hardware in iOS. That might also affect the performance and at the end the user experience. So what can we measure when we are talking about a native app? And as I mentioned, because the underlying frameworks are different, there's different metrics that we care when we are looking at a native app. So I divided them in 4 big groups. The first one is related to the device resource usage. So this is how well your app is using the resources available in the device that are being shared with other apps that are also running in the same device. So we can measure things like the percentage of CPU usage, how much memory the app is using, how much data is being sent and received from the app, how much battery is using. You don't want to drain the battery too fast, if not the user is gonna get very angry. And here we have more things like storage and other metrics that we can add to this list to make sure that we're doing a conscious usage of these resources that are shared. The second group is related to rendering, how well our app is rendering. And here we can measure rendering times, or something very common is frames per second, which is FPS. And to give an idea, to achieve a fluid rendering, which is set at 60 frames per second, recommendation also by Apple, each frame in our app should be completed in less than 16 milliseconds. What happens if this is not the case? Well, it depends on the type of app we are testing. If this is an app that has like heavy graphics or animations, like a mobile game, probably if we are not rendering at this level, let's say we are at 30 or even 15 frames per second, the application will create a disruption in the animation and it will probably freeze. So that would be what the user experience. On the other hand, if we do excessive drawing in the screen, this requires high CPU or GPU, and this will cause high battery usage. So this is where we need to first measure how well we are rendering in each screen of our app, and also have a baseline or where we want to be depending on what type of app we have. Of course, for some apps, like mobile games, this is very important to keep at a 60 frames per second or higher. And the last one here that I listed, which is called JANX, which measures the render lag. This can tell you if the user is experimenting any lags in the screen drawing. Basically, there's a frame that was dropped. So you can see that by measuring the JANX in your app. The third group is errors. Could be any exception that happens in the app, or the app just crashes in the device. Specifically in Android, we have ANRs. which stands for application and responding. And this happens as a user, what you will experience with it, this happens in your, if you're using an Android app, is a dialogue that just shows you if you want to wait for the app to respond or close it. And this is due to certain event that you executed. Let's say you touch, a bottom or something in the screen, and there was no response from that event after 5 seconds, then Android shows this error. And these are things that you can only capture when you're actually analyzing performance, and specifically, the client side, so the actual app installed in a device. And last but not least, we have the possibility to measure response times. And one of the most, important metrics that many developers measure is the app startup time. So this is how long does your app take to start. You can, or to open, you can measure this in 3 different states in Android, like, warm, cold, or hot startup. This depends, like if you're opening the app for the first time, you're bringing it from the background, etc. And you want to make sure that this time stays as low as possible, because it is well known that apps that takes more than 3 or 4 seconds to start will have a huge impact in new user onboarding and retention. And then you can measure, basically the response time of any transaction or event that your app has. For example, it could be a login. For an e-commerce app, this could be a checkout, that you want to measure the response that the end user experience sees, or in a way experiences. So this will, if you measure this from the client side, this will give you that real user experience, but also you need to consider that this will include, all the times from like the server response time, database response time, if there's any SQL that is being sent, of course, network latency, if we are testing different networks, and the rendering times as well. But if we measure them on the client side, we get that closer experience, an idea on how, well are we doing in different areas. Usually this will be the most important transactions in your app that you want to see how well the response time is and the experience for the end user. Okay, so we cover differences between web and mobile, how this might impact the user experience, what we can measure on each. So now I'm going to talk and I'm going to share some tools that we can use for both web and mobile apps. So when it comes to web apps, I'm pretty sure most people are familiarized with Lighthouse from Google Web Dev Tools. Not only Lighthouse, but also Google Vitals it is a standard for client-side performance for websites. If you use Lighthouse, you can analyze and get tips and gather a lot of information on how your website is loading in mobile, how you're loading your JavaScript resources, what are the cache policies, if there's anything you can improve there. So a lot of the metrics that I mentioned previously, you could actually analyze them with a tool like Lighthouse. There are also APM tools that stand for Application Performance Management that give you also a lot of information and an optimization that you can do on the client side when you're testing a website, both from a desktop or from a mobile device. And then when it comes to native apps, there are some profiling tools that most developers or many developers are familiarized with. When we are developing and testing an Android app, inside Android Studio, we have Android Profiler. If we are developing for iOS, inside Xcode, there's Instrument. These are of great help when you need to debug an app or you're looking for a root cause of some performance issue, and you can do that inside the IDE. You need to have, of course, the code of the app, but it's helpful for mostly debugging purposes. And the last one is Opt-in Desktop, which is the free tool that I mentioned we launched last year. And I know we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to do a quick demo of both Lighthouse and Opt-in Desktop if we have time. So Lighthouse has a bunch of tools. This one is called PageSpeed. For those who don't know, this is a web UI interface. It's pretty straightforward to use, but I wanted to just give you a quick overview on what information is shown. So I'm going to test this website, this test site by Opt-in, and it's just going to run a quick analysis of this page and show me some results. A lot of the reds or warnings are based on performance scores set by Google. So we can also see how we are comparing with different websites. So you can see here, looking at this URL, this is a result for web and this is a result for desktop. I can see that my test site is really bad for mobile users. This is the general performance score, and this shows me what is actually affecting that score and where are some areas of improvement or opportunities, as they call them. And to give you just a quick idea, like basically it's telling me that I can improve the size of my images. They're too big for mobile. So it gives me recommendations. And this is a very easy way to get started with optimizing your website for mobile. Let's jump to Opt-in. As I mentioned, this is a free tool. It's a desktop app. I have it installed in my Mac. There's an option for Windows. And then I have here an Android device. I'm going to run a quick test so I can show you how to do something similar to what PageSpeed does, but on a native mobile app. I also have my iPhone connected. This works with real devices that you connect through USB or emulators, as it is the case of this Android emulator. I'm going to choose the Android device, and I'm going to select which app I want to test. I have a demo app from Opt-in. I'm just going to put a name to my test. This would be like an exploratory test that I typically do of my app. I have other configurations that I'm not going to go over here, but I could choose like different thresholds if I want. For example, if I want to get alerted if X amount of memory is used, I can set that in my thresholds. So I select the app, it opens in the device, and here I can do, if I had if it was an exploratory test, I just explore the app, or if I have any specific area of my app that I want to test. This is an e-commerce app, so I can add items to a cart. I can check my cart, and I can do different things. And at the same time that I'm doing my exploratory test, Opt-in is capturing everything. I can also report back or take notes. This is very used by functional testers as well. They're using Opt-in. And then it's just at any time, I can force some memory. So we see something interesting in the report. I have different things that I could do in this app. Just going to end the session, so we have some time at the end for any questions. It looks like the app actually crashed after my memory increase. And now there's a report that is being generated. This report is generated locally, so you can access it from your computer or publish it to your cloud workspace. And as we can see here, this is kind of like a dashboard that Opt-in shows with the main metrics, both regarding resource usage, frames per second, and any errors or exceptions. A video of the test that I just did, and then the most important part would be this graph that here you can analyze how each of these resources were performing, how well your app was rendering. You can also add different events. You can add marks to measure different events. So in this case, I want to know how long did the add to cart take, and also make sure that this is under certain threshold. In this case, it was almost 2 seconds. I could put that as a threshold. Here you can see I actually put a threshold for my memory in a config file that I choose when I start the test. So I get a warning if it's over that threshold. This is also very useful if you're testing then in CI/CD, so you can get this. And then another, pretty good thing about this tool is that it already captures all the logs. So if you want to share this report with a developer, everything is included. And as I mentioned, it is free, so you can check it out. If you're getting started with more performance, it is a good place to get started. And last but not least, my recommendation is to start as soon as possible with mobile performance, both for web or native mobile. First, it will really help you understand how your website or your app is behaving. We have experience with a lot of testers. They come to ask us for help in performance, and usually we tell them this is something that you need to get familiarized with yourself. There's no need to have like an expert in the team to start with performance testing. So we recommend to start capturing this as early as you have even the first package version of your app, if it's a native app. Also, this will help you to see trends. Let's say you add, you do a change in your app, then you are, running an exploratory test, and then you see that there is a big change in some of the metrics. Maybe there was, a regression introduced with that change, so you can detect this as well. And it basically adds a lot of more information to your current exploratory test sessions. And it's meant to be also something that will prevent from releasing new performance issues to the end user. Great. So time for questions. If you're interested also in learning more about performance testing in general, or specifically mobile performance, I invite you to check out the blog at Abstracta or AppTeam blog. And if you have any questions or feedback, please reach out to me directly at sofia@appteam.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Sophia. All right. Questions, feel free to take yourself off mute to ask them, or if you put them in the chat, and I will echo them as we have time. Also, a reminder that please fill out the surveys I just posted in the chat as well. Thanks.
I did rush a bit through the demo, so if anyone has any question, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I really like the slide that you had where you broke down the different types of metrics you can have for performance testing, because I know I've heard them all across the board, but then seeing getting them broken down, here's the specific.
I do have another presentation, which is not this one, but because I saw that it's not that I think widespread, to actually think about performance testing as end to end, not only load testing, which is what most people think about. And I get it. I was also a performance tester for a long time, and that was the only thing I was testing for, but also understanding network and how that affects performance and client side.
Right.
And how
breaking it down to the pieces.
Exactly. And each part has there's different things that you're going to be testing for. There's different tools. There's different reasons why you need to test. And we get asked a lot, I want to do, a load test with this. And it's why do you want to do that? What is your goal? So trying to also expand the concept of performance testing just being load testing. That's the whole idea.
Yeah, what do you think you're going to do with the performance testing?
No, because it is common. I don't know if anyone in the audience has experienced this, but it is common that they come, and I've been a performance tester consultant for a while, and they're I want to do this huge test with all these users, and they want to invest all this money, and they don't really know why, because they heard that it was what they needed to do. So really understanding why, what's your goal and what makes sense to test. It's something that I feel we need more to talk more about it.
All right. So we have a question from Rachel that's asking about what types of metrics would take priority over the others and be handled first.
Yeah, that's a great question, Rachel. And I'll say it really depends on the app you're testing. So my experience is different types of apps, from mobile gamings all the way to fintech, e-commerce apps, or just simple websites on mobile. Some apps are more resource have a higher resource consumption than others. So in that case, you will be looking a lot at like, memory, potential memory leaks, or even like rendering times if you have a lot of graphics in your app. So that would be the areas you care about the most. Some e-commerce app, they care a lot about like how long does it take to start, and how are the responses for like a checkout or other areas. So it really depends on the app, because like basically you're thinking like, where are the risks that we need to mitigate, and those risks change depending on what does your app do. If it's a mobile game versus an e-commerce app, they're pretty different. So in that case, what we've seen is what we call the KPIs of mobile experience are different from team to team. And this is something that also if there's an internal like DevOps practice or QA practice, they will define which these KPIs are for their specific app based on where the biggest risks are identified, and then measure them to be also proactive